Hello and welcome to On the Corner, the official podcast of pitchers.com. I'm your host, Eric Samulski, joined, as always, by the man himself, Nick Pollack. Nick, it's the first list update with regular season games behind us.
Isn't that cool?
It is cool.
Great. Yeah.
We got 2 days on playback TV together, 2 appearances,
yeah.
talking baseball, watching baseball. It's nice.
Oh, man, it's amazing. We've every single time there's a game on, we've been watching baseball. You've come on twice, on Thursday and on Monday, and yeah, if there's baseball on, you're just like, at night, be like, oh man, I'm going to watch some games or see what's going on. Just go there. Someone will be on stage and hanging out and talking about whatever games and cycling through all of them. So it's been a blast. Playback.tv/pitcherlist. Come on down, y'all. It's amazing.
It is fun. It's definitely a lot of fun. It's almost as much fun as talking pitching with you, which is what we're going to do today. This is the regular season, so we are into updating the list, which again comes out every Monday. Make sure you go check that out over on pitchlist.com. As Nick has always said, we got the rankings, but also the notes are the most important thing. Don't just look at the number, right? Go read the actual article, read all the blurbs, read why the players are there. So we're going to go through those in order as we always do, and we're going to talk about some of the guys that stood out the most to us. Obviously, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of changes. There's a lot of things that are going on, and a lot after one start is just like, hey, it's something we're keeping an eye on. Right. It's something that is interesting. It's something that could be a big deal, but we want to try to temper our expectations. And that is a big reason why, if you look at the list, there are no changes for the top 43 pitchers that Nick put on the list. There is not a change until number 44, which is in tier 7. And on playback yesterday, you got some pushback on that. So I just wanted you to explain very briefly why there are so few changes at the top of your list right now.
Sure. One start at the very beginning of the season could mean a lot of things. And a good example is Bailey Ober being sick. We take a long time analyzing everything and saying this is what we're going to expect with the guys who are rest of season plays. Keep in mind with the list, the top 41, I say this in my drafts, those are guys I'm not dropping throughout the entire year. At least I expect not to. There's no way you're dropping them now. And yeah, you shouldn't be making any moves, any different assessment outside of, hey, this guy had one bad game. If there was something that was just dramatically like, oh no, this is so terrible, then maybe I would consider it. Still, I would even just say maybe it's just one game. And at the very least, for guys that are so rosterable and we expect to be productive throughout the entire year, I'm not going to give up on that or change that assessment after one game.
Yeah, and obviously the guys that people were talking about the most in playback are the guys that did this last year too, right? It was like, why are we not dropping Michael King? Why are we not dropping, meaning dropping down the list? Sorry. Why are we not moving Michael King down? Why are we not moving Bailey Ober down? And it's like, we said that after one start last year too. And they got it together. So we dive into tier 7. I'm just going to explain these guys from the top. Also, because I kind of want to talk about number 42, who didn't move, Jackson Jobe. This is tier 7. 42, Jackson Jobe. 43, Drew Rasmussen. 44, Mackenzie Gore. 45, Gavin Williams. 46, Grant Holmes. 47, Roki Sasaki. And 48, Spencer Arrighetti. We do need to start with number 44 because he is, I think, the 3rd biggest mover overall on the list.
Yeah.
And that's Mackenzie Gore. To a certain extent, we saw this last year with Mackenzie Gore, where he got off to this amazing start at the beginning of the year and then kind of cratered. However, we do have a different slider, which could make this a different situation than in 2024. Does this feel like a different Mackenzie Gore to you?
So I want to really, really lean into the fact that once you get to tier 7, it is a bit like the cliff. Like you do have some Hollies in tier 8 who might actually turn into the back end of tier 6 of saying, look, you're not going to drop these guys. That might be Nathan Eovaldi, it might be Jeffrey Springs, that kind of thing. But right now is where we're saying, look, you should be okay dropping some of these and really going after others, because we've already seen a few pitchers who, yeah, they might be actually available in your leagues and you should have over some of them.
Right.
And I'm not saying that I would want to drop any of these guys right now in tier 7, but just grasp that I can understand doing so, especially this week or next, especially if things aren't going their way. It's not like in previous tier 6. So that's why I'm more aggressive inside of this. And I feel like those who are sturdy of tier 8 are not as demonstrably very valuable, that you shouldn't be taking the high upside play. So Mackenzie Gore going absurd double-digit strikeouts, more strikeouts than any start he had last year against the Phillies of all teams, throwing a slider at 87 and change instead of the gyro 90, which really was a cutter. And I even wanted to call it a cutter last year, but Savant insisted it was a 90-mile-per-hour slider. Fine, but he used it like a cutter inside to righties. And now they're calling it a cutter. I'm like, oh, can you just go back and change last year's as a cutter? Just makes it all nicer on our player pages. But that is a big deal. I mean, he really took down lefties with this pitch.
Yeah.
And maybe that brings in the consistency, because Mackenzie Gore's biggest problem last year was that he didn't have really anything else outside the fastball. Sometimes the curve, the change, the cutter
curve was inconsistent.
Was there. But now that you have a slider that is great and works, now all of a sudden the consistency can be there. It was also kind of interesting to say that Mackenzie Gore didn't have the greatest command that I've ever seen from him. He wasn't at 97. And it still was so effective with all these pitches in tandem. And if I actually said, look, that Mackenzie Gore is that guy for the year, he's not at 44. He's at like 20, 25 or something.
Right.
And I have to move him up because everyone in the 50s and 60s are just not showing that. We have a lot of questions, some guys who haven't gone yet, but I don't think any of them are going to have the kind of game that Gore just had.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had to put Mackenzie Gore at 44, and I'm hoping that he is not a hipster now, headache-inducing pitcher stifling the entire roster. It is very possible that, next start he's just all of a sudden the same kind of guy, but at least we have a reason to believe that he could not be now.
Yeah, and we should just note Mackenzie Gore is, we've been talking about him forever. He's 26 years old. This would be his third full major league season. He has pitched 2 full major league seasons. That's it. So in terms of like just defining who he is, like he's very much still a pitcher who is evolving and changing and growing, even though it feels like he's been around forever.
Yeah.
We got to talk about number 44 on this list, the top guy in this, 42 on this list, the top guy, Jackson Jobe. He did throw last night, and so this list came out on Monday, and then he pitched last night. I'm just curious your thoughts on it. I continue to kind of shoulder shrug Jackson Jobe for right now, not like as a pitching prospect in general. Everything, like he doesn't miss bats in the way he should miss bats. And I do think a lot of that could be command. The four-seam fastball has decent velocity and elite IVB. It had just a 20% CSW and a 40% zone rate in the first start. He hasn't missed bats in the brief times at like AA, AAA, spring training. He just hasn't really missed bats since he's advanced to the upper minors and Major League Baseball in the way that his raw stuff suggests that he should, which tells me it's just a pitcher who needs to continue to grow and learn. And maybe that's sequencing, and maybe that's location, and maybe it's a combination of those things. And it could click. I just don't know that it's going to click now. It might not click until the end of this year or next year or whatever.
Absolutely. I really regret this one. I wish I had him closer to 60. And it stinks. But that's kind of the case of it. I watched them last night, and I thought, yep, this is someone who still isn't, exactly as you said, isn't polished. He has a classic case of, hey, I can't hit the edges like I want to with my four-seamer. Thus, my cutter has to go in the middle of the plate, right? It's not a guy who's playing quadrant ball with his strike zone. He's going edges or center. He's playing donut ball. That's just something I just came up with right now, and I don't know if I like it, but we're going to do that. So that's a problem. And for a guy that, yes, we know, we see the cutter and the changeup. Sometimes they're just so good. The big movement on that curveball, he throws hard. And 97, it's just, he's not demanding success with his at-bats. And you compare him with watching Drew Rasmussen or Jordan Hicks or with Ryan Pepio. I mean, that's just a good example on the top of my head. But like Drew Rasmussen, watching him, I'm like, oh man, Rasmussen, you were top 30. Like, I don't care. Like yesterday's start was so good Monday night. You're getting like early information about next week. I mean, he's throwing 91-mile-per-hour cutters and they cannot touch it. He's throwing these sinkers at 94, 95 with tons of movement. And the sweeper is just there to mess around with guys too. And he has a four-seamer at 97. It's just, oh my gosh, they can't touch Drew Rasmussen. And yes, it was only 5 innings, 70 pitches, but Drew Rasmussen is going to be 6 by May 1st. And if not sooner, considering he's efficient. Right. I'm not even joking. Like, I see a 2.8 season, 2.8 ERA with like a 107 whip. Like, that would not surprise me in the slightest with Drew Rasmussen, the way that he's throwing. So sure, you can throw in any sort of injury risk or whatever in there too. By all means, I get that. It's really just, he's so good. And I believe that on a per game basis, much more than someone like Job and everyone else in the 40s. So that's kind of where I'm at. Those are like the biggest ones. I'm like, I really regret the ranking because I didn't get to see the start. Wish I could have seen one start first from these guys. It's always the toughest one on Monday. But that's where I am with them.
We did see one start from Gavin Williams, who didn't throw the cutter, even though he told me in Arizona he was going to throw it when he left Arizona. I'm still in on Gavin Williams, but that's disappointing. And then Grant Holmes is 46 here, who had a rough start against the Dodgers last night. It's the Dodgers. He wasn't overly precise with his secondary pitches, but again, like, you probably weren't starting him against the Dodgers or expecting him to carve up the Dodgers. I wouldn't. Obviously would have liked for something better in terms of just like his overall command, but I'm not reading too much into that.
Yeah, so I actually have Grant Holmes in 2 leagues, and I sat him in both because
even though you told me you would pitch him in a 2-start week.
2-start week if I had to lock on Monday, yes,
because he gets the Marlins for the
daily is the both of the games that I did. So both the leagues that I have him. Fair. I bench him. I'm going to start him for the Marlins, right? And with Grant Holmes, he's someone that is dancing between this realm of like, okay, you do have 25% strikeout ability. You also could go 6 innings regularly, but you haven't quite done it yet. So there is that ceiling part of it. But I actually expect you just to be a staple of this rotation throughout the season. And he's someone I don't really want to let go. Like, I think it's a better version of Reese Olson is essentially what I'm saying about Grant Holmes, and who also struggled, by the way, against the Dodgers. So you hold on for one start and everything's fine. I didn't want to adjust Grant Holmes. I knew that I was benching him here.
Yeah, I get that. We'll move on to tier number 8. Tier number 8 starts with number 49, Nathan Eovaldi, number 50, Jeffrey Springs, 51, Nick Lodolo, 52, Dustin May, 53, Clay Holmes, 54, Reese Olson, 55, Nick Pivetta, 56, Chris Bubic, 57, Max Meyer, 58, Richard Fitz, and 59, Shane Baz. I just realized as we're diving into
this, I'm going to give it to you. Don't worry. I'm going to call it the leather tome. Today. I'm just going to make them up like old school today. All right.
And also, we did skip the first 6, so we didn't have a theme.
So tier 8 is the leather tome because it could be something that you always want to carry with you, or it could be something that you open it and you unleash a whole lot of pain. A magical leather tome. So really, the main thing here, I would imagine for you, has to be Chris Bubic.
Yeah, he is the biggest mover on the list, up 30 spots. He was the game we were watching. I mean, I guess we kind of tuned in. I jumped on to playback towards the end of that game. You were probably watching far more of it than I was. Lance Brozdowski also pointed out the lower arm slot for Bubic was something that people were seeing in the first start. The lower arm slot, but was still able to elevate the fastball. That led to a flat Hava, horizontal vertical approach
angle. I just call it attack angle at this point. It's a lot easier. 1.4 is above average. That means it's very
a really good IVB upstairs. I think the IVB was like around 18.
18 with a flat attack angle. No wonder it succeeds at 92, 93.
And so the four-seam fastball was amazing. It got tons of whiffs. I'm in on Bubic because of that, but I do need to just point out that I don't think anything else was all that great.
Absolutely. The changeup and slider were not commanded well. And by the end of it, the changeup improved. He was down and away a little bit more. But that is an area that Bubic struggled with in the past. Was some starts, man, that changeup's looking good, and he's got the slider cooking and everything. And this wasn't his peak. But to see him just completely lay the foundation with that four-seamer was glorious. Yeah. And I can understand that could be there constantly throughout the year. So then if you're telling me, well, this is a guy who's productive, even if he doesn't have his peak, then I'm like, well, sign me up, because the Royals are going to allow him to go 6 innings, it looks like. And then has a good fastball that's working with 2 secondaries that should be able to get whiffs too. So I'm very encouraged by his first start. It's more about how real is this and if it's going to be sustainable.
Yeah, he's worth adding anywhere. because if those secondaries click, you could see a real breakout, but they didn't click right now, and you could get a Reed Detmer situation where like Reed Detmer's early last year, you were like, ooh, the fastball, he's taken.
Yeah, had some vert last year, but the secondaries
He's
are so
gotten some
bad, right?
strides, and then you're like, nothing else is there. In the same tier, one below, Bubic 57, Max Meyer had a really good start, was against the Pirates, but we saw the new sinker. We saw the added the
4
he's got
ticks
like the
on
two.
the slider. 4
Yeah,
ticks.
we've got he's got the second breaking ball now, plus the sinker. It was all the things that we kind of wrote about and saw in spring training that he is now, bringing in the sweeper plus the slider. Not just being before where he was just kind of like the harder slider, the 91 mile an hour, or sorry, that's 91 now. The 88 mile an hour slider last year, 91 now because he's added in the slower sweeper. Look, it wasn't a perfect start, but Meyer with velocity and a deeper pitch mix is again somebody who needs to be on your rosters because there is more upside there than there was last year.
Yeah, it is really
and
weird.
You're going to pick your poison thing with like Meyer and Bubic. They're guys who flash upside, and who do you believe in? Who do you buy into? It's up to you and what you want to see out of a pitcher.
I think we saw a little bit more promise across the quality of the arsenal with Bubic, potentially, but you saw more refinement across the arsenal with Meyer without as much of a ceiling, I think, for the things outside the slider. And what's so weird is Max Meyer was a slider-only guy last year, broke the Waskari Noah rule, and he kind of still is, but everything like across the board has just gotten an upgrade. Right, +1 to all skills here. So it's an SOJ he's been giving, if everyone who's played Diablo. So Max Meyer is still not blowing me away with his four seamer. Actually, they allowed that home run to Andrew McCutchen, which was like, what? How did you do that, McCutchen? How did you get to that one up and in? Sinker does look good. The changeup at times, okay. The sweeper wasn't really that big of a deal, but the slider at 92 was just like, that's really good. And having more support for that should make him a Holly to me, like right around it. Could just be like Eovaldi in Springs essentially for the year.
Yeah.
The problem is that he's on the Marlins, but it still could be very productive for you. I'd say you hold on and you kind of see if there's more that he unlocks with those secondaries, which is the sliders, the primary, just so we're clear here.
Yes, for sure. Another guy who like I think kind of fits, but maybe is like the rhino, or I believe it was the rhino, like in Jumanji at the very end where like all the other animals are ahead and it's like sluggishly like wheezing behind, but like still,
that's right.
Still kind of in the pack, but isn't really in the pack. And that's Richard Fitz for me right now. Where like he still is an intriguing, like throw him on your bench. Maybe there's something here, but we didn't see what we saw a decent outing, but it wasn't really the outing we were hoping for based on spring because the velocity and the shape of the fastball didn't carry over from spring training. However, that being said, I watched this whole outing as a Red Sox fan. Tough early on, but again, you're making like your first start as a member of the rotation, beginning of the season. You're going against the Rangers on the road. Like that's a good offense. Like it's a tough situation. He pitched himself out of trouble in the second inning and then retired, I believe, 13 Rangers in a row, was able to command the strike zone, was at 56 pitches through 5 innings, was not dominant in terms of like overpowering guys, but was really efficient, throwing some pretty good sweepers and sliders, like mixing those pitches together. And then the 6th inning, he was undone by 2 home runs. The one to Wyatt Langford was like a wall scraper in right field that, again, which wasn't a really well located pitch, but it turned into a home run. Adolis Garcia, he was in a 1-2 count, poorly located curveball, crushed it to left field. So these are things where like you got a young pitcher, the curveball is a new pitch for him. He just added it. He went to it in a big spot and didn't locate it well, and it got hit. And those are the things where like you're going to get those growing pains from a guy who is not only young and learning how to get out MLB hitters, but is also basically learning how to pitch with an entirely new pitch mix that has 3 brand new pitches plus reshaped versions of other pitches. And so I think the overall stat line looks kind of ho-hum, but I think it was a little better under the hood than that. I just don't think it's as exciting as we thought in the future. But I would say, like, we know Newcomb is the guy to go when
Right.
Bayo comes back. The Red Sox had talked about using a 6-man rotation because of the multitude of pitchers coming off of injuries. So even when Giolito comes back, there's a chance Fitz remains in this rotation. And I think there's a chance that he still is a guy who has some upside, but could at least be a streaming starter early on in the season where you pick your matchups and see how he does.
Well, I'm really disappointed that Richard Fitz isn't throwing as hard as we saw in the spring. It was about 95 and change as opposed to like 97 plus. And also the extension was at 17. Sorry, the extension was at like 7.2 in the last one, but then it was like 6.5 here. And I wonder if that was a data error or something, or I don't know. And also the vert dropped massively. It was like sub 15, and we saw 18 or so in the previous one as well. I wonder, if there's a lot of calibration things that were weird, or maybe this just who he is. Maybe it was weird in the last spring start. Maybe it was weird in Texas, because also vert was way down on DeGrom too, to be fair. But with Fitz, I actually had to make this decision in a quality start league. Do I want Jordan Hicks or do I want Richard Fitz? And I chose Jordan Hicks because I think Richard Fitz is someone that will go under the radar a little bit more in your 12 teamers. He's, you look at the line and you go, oh, okay, this is fine. I don't know who this guy is. And he had 3, poor quality start, right? 4.5 ERA so far. He had 1 whip of like 4 Ks. Like, it's not something that the average fantasy manager is going to go off and get. They don't say like 8 to 10 strikeouts or something. So you can probably survive one more. It's very possible that Fitz doesn't come through against the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be very attentive to that to see, all right, who is the real guy here? So be a little bit, cautious about Fitz. I do like the fact that he has a lot more pitches. But it kind of reminded me sometimes watching him that he was like Cutter Crawford, and just there was no hero pitch. There was no slider that really was just like, oh man, this is the thing for me that he's got. And it does bother me a little bit more than I thought. I also want to really mention quickly, I see in the chat, pitches per hour is the most underrated stat. I actually agree a lot. And we actually created out percentage on the site. Taylor Tarter does a really good job with that. That was nominated for an FSWA award. So I'm a huge fan of out percentage, and I think it's something that I try to talk about a lot, the guys that can be efficient in games and not be like your big strikeout, but like 5-inning games with lots of walks. That is actually very harmful for you. So those who can go 6 innings efficiently, like Jordan Hicks did, are very, very valuable.
Agreed. We're going to move on to the next tier, tier 9, edge at the edge of the cliff, but we're going to do that after this break. So tier number 9 starts with number 60, Jesus Luzardo, 61, Taj Bradley, 62, Jack Leiter, who you call Jack Zippo, 63, 63, Reynaldo Lopez, who we should say after the list was published, he went on the IL, but the list was published before that. 64, Yusei Kikuchi, 65, Casey Mize, 66, Landon Rupp, who we have still yet to see actual pitch a regular season game, and 67, the cover boy, Tylor Megill. So
Tylor, call him by his name.
Well, listen, I'm just reading what's on the page. What's this tier called, and why is it called that?
All right, so I'm going to call this the candy van, because it can be so sweet. It can be so great. And maybe it actually is, but you don't really know if you want to talk to these people. And this is actually right at the moment. I call the edge of the cliff inside of the notes every single week. I say this. The edge of the cliff is kind of actually tier 7 in a way. But this is really like, okay, do you want to go for just your own Toby? You want to go for like your Gosman and your Soriano and Matthew Boyd? That's fine. That's safer. That's cool. I don't think those guys are going to be, I mean, they could be a top 25 guy by the end of the year if they pitch 180 innings. And that means that they'll be okay volume and stuff. Fine. But if you're looking for that big strikeout play, like this is your tier. And it's also filled with guys like Mize, who can actually be a more consistent Holly potentially, as well. So I do want to say very quickly, the Jack Zippo nickname, I didn't make it up. It was from Rated Rookies, who I call Rate Drookies on Playback.tv chat. He came up with that. And it's just, I love it. Jack Zippo, he throws hard and his name is Lighter. Like, are you kidding me? That's so perfect. And I'm ashamed. I'm hurt that I didn't come up with it myself.
I like it, and hopefully hopefully you don't get Zippo from him on your fantasy this year. But we'll get maybe, I know we're tight on time today, but we'll get to some of those guys. But we have to start in this tier with Tyler Megill.
Yes,
since he is the cover boy, what did he do to warrant such an honor?
So the main thing is that Tyler Megill has not had a good secondary pitch to complement his four-seamer. And all of a sudden he has this new slider that's better, and he was able to actually command it. Oh, and also, his four-seamer, it was actually up and away. He actually did it. He's not been able to locate the four-seamer up properly to take advantage of its velocity and its extension, and having that gyro slider underneath now, also throwing in some sinkers that were actually low too. This is the best version I've ever seen Tyler Megill. It's why he deserves the name Tyloid today. However, it does not mean he's going to do it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And for guys who have had such questionable command in the past, I'm very skeptical of all of a sudden them just tweaking it and being okay. So I have to have him at 67. But man, this is the spec ad. Like, this is a really good, I hope this is real. It could be gone. Generally, I say 1 is an exception, 2 is a suggestion, and 3 is confirmation. It's really 4. But that's the loose rule, and you might want to just jump in now on Tyler Megill, because if he has another good start, it's going to be hard to get him easily.
Yeah, Tyler Megill was somebody I talked about in the First Pitch Arizona presentation, because I talked about him adding the cutter last year, which it seems like he has kind of morphed into this new kind of like gyro slider, because he wasn't throwing the cutter in the first start. But the idea was he added the sinker, he added the cutter, because the four-seamer missed a lot of bats. It's a good swing and miss pitch for him, but as a poor command pitch. So by adding a cutter or adding the sinker and being able to throw fastballs, he can command 4 strikes, get ahead of the count. He can then use the four-seamer for swings and misses. What we saw from this new slider was a really good kind of like swing and miss pitch. And then you still have the sinker in there, which he was, average at. And 87% strike rate in the first outing is really good. A 50% zone rate is average. But again, it's taking some of the pressure off the four-seamer. It's fun to spend all offseason thinking about his cutter and then have him not use it anymore. But
you mean Gavin Williams? Yeah.
Yeah. Both of them. But I still have a soft spot for both of them. So I'm with you on this. That I have been in on Jack Leiter. I'm happy to see the first outing went well. And when I say went well, I also mean everything wasn't but everything wasn't clicking and he got through.
Right.
And I think that's really important for him, is like we talked about, this is a guy who needs to learn to get out major league hitters. And sometimes you need to learn to do that without your best stuff. And we saw the velocity carry over. And so we saw some of like the raw stuff carry over in some of the pitches, but he was able to get himself out of trouble.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jack Leiter is one of those that you're going to have to invest in a little bit. Yeah. Right. And we actually do think Jack Leiter, it's unlike with Mize. I'm starting to see between the two of them that Leiter is a more complete pitcher in my view. Mm-hmm. But I have a little bit more faith that Job can just throw strikes and get away with it than Leiter can. I mean, we've seen in the past that four-seamer just gets tagged a lot. It's possible, I hate even saying this, but it's possible that both are young enough that they are doing obvious tipping things that they haven't corrected yet. That's like the snake oil of pitching analysis, because that's just like, oh no, they're totally fine. It's just tipping and they'll fix that. It's like, how am I supposed to prove any of this? How am I supposed to really nail that down? It is believable for a guy with just one of the greatest expected whiff chances ever in a fastball that Jack Zippo. So I think if you have Jack Zippo, you got to hold on. You can't, you're going to brace yourself for a couple weeks, and you're going to be the guy that has Jack Zippo on your team after that.
We're going to jump to tier 10 in a second, but I did just want to quickly get your thoughts on Jesus Luzardo, new sweeper, 11 strikeouts in the first outing. Do you think this drastically changes him or not so much? Also,
Right.
added
So I saw
velocity
some.
across the board, almost 2 miles an hour up on the fastball. The change, everything is kind of up velocity.
I guess, yeah, I guess it was like 96 and change on the four seam, which didn't hit alarm bells for me because he had 97 in 2003. It was like
Sure, up from last
95
year,
to
but we know he
96
was
in 2002. It's like,
he was
it's kind of
pitching
in
for
line,
sure.
but that's totally fine. The sweeper obviously is, I think, a benefit. The problem I see with Jesus Zardo is he's kind of, I feel like he's still the same guy. And I saw on Reddit that everyone was kind of surprised that I didn't have Jesus Luzardo higher up. I don't see this start against Rocky Road as a start that is, oh, hey, cool, he's definitively good. I think it was Rocky Road, not the Nationals. I believe I got that right.
It was the Nationals.
It was the Nationals. I'm sorry. He got pushed up one more. It was Christopher Sanchez, right, against the Rockies. Jesus Luzardo is a guy that allowed back-to-back home runs in spring training. He also allowed a 600 run game in his final tune-up. And he also had a good start in between that, right? Last year, we would see this. I mean, even in his good years, the reason I was still in is because it was like a 27% K rate, but also he had this like 120 whip or so in these like 3.8 ERA seasons. Because yeah, he will allow home runs. His four-seamer is still not good. It is such a bad extension. And yes. I'm still worried that Luzardo is going to make those mistake pitches over the plate to right-handers. They're going to get crushed, and it's very much boom or bust. So I saw this game. I'm like, hey, look, we got one of the good ones first. But because it's the first start, we're reacting stronger. And I said, Nick, what about Mackenzie Gore? Mackenzie Gore has a much better new addition than the sweeper for Luzardo. I want to make that very clear. So I did not elevate Luzardo here. I feel like this is just kind of what we expected.
Okay, that is fair. Somebody that we did elevate or didn't on the list, but we might now leads off tier 10. It's number 68, Jordan Hicks. Number 69, Kevin Gossman. Number 70, Zach Eflin. Number 71, David Peterson. 72, Nick Martinez. 73, Matthew Boyd. 74, Jose Soriano. 75, Merrill Kelly. 76, Chris Bassett. 77, Ronel Blanco. 78, Justin Verlander. And 79, Brady Singer. Keeping in mind this was recorded again Monday before yesterday's start that everybody went gaga over. But what is this tier called and why is it called that?
This is glasses at the brim of your nose.
Okay. And you're watching a lot of Severance.
Oh, I have. It's amazing.
Dylan's glasses are always.
Oh, I love them. No, honestly, I just love how like. Oh no. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. I think that guy's great. Yeah, it's one of those cases I can just imagine someone sitting back in an armchair and be like, "This is my life. I'm content with this, and I don't want to go off and have adventures." And there's the glasses that they push up as they say it. I'm just thinking of like my father, whatever, singing on the couch. So anyway, that's not how my father sounds at all. Jordan Hicks, of course, leads it off. And yes. If I were to do this again, now that I know what I know, I would probably have him right where Max Meyer is, right above Richard Fitz. It's easy in that tier of like, okay, actually, I mean, I'm even tempted to say that he is right actually at 51, right where Jeffrey Springs is. Because I see Hicks as, I watched that game all the way through. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Better than any start I've seen from Hicks last year. And I want to understand, yes, I want to make clear, he was at 98 in his first game last year. Jordan Hicks had 0 games as a starter where he threw at least a 70% strike rate on his sweeper. And it was 77% here against a right-handed heavy lineup.
Because he also tweaked that pitch too. It's a little harder and tighter, and so it doesn't
not catch that. Sweep. Good stuff.
It doesn't sweep as much, but I think he can command it a lot better.
Right. Oh, that's huge. And let's be honest, he got some stupid swings on that and located very well down and away to right-handers throughout the start. His sinker was glorious. That second inning that I did a pitch breakdown of, it's like a 3-minute long pitch breakdown because it's quick. He strikes out 2 batters, maybe actually all 3 of them. And it's like 10 pitches. It's amazing. Go watch it. You'll understand instantly. Oh yeah, he's at 98 and that's great. Now he did go down to 96 and 97 after that last year. And then eventually down to like 95, 96. And maybe that happens. And okay, we move on then. But right now I see Jordan Hicks. I'm like, I want him on every team. I feel so good about this right now. Yeah. And sure, it might not last, but I don't know about any of the other guys. And Hicks deserves all of the love right now.
Yeah. And you know how I found out about the slider is I used the PL Pro app that Kyle Bland put
Oh,
together, where I was able to check the live stats app, checked his usage, his shape, his velocity, etc. But yeah, as you mentioned, as I wrote about a little bit too, like it was really great to see. Hicks deserves to be on your roster. We need to see the splitter get better if he's going to do this against a lefty heavy lineup.
barely faced lefties yesterday, so he had to throw 3 splitters. One was even against a right-hander. Actually, it looks like all 3 were. I don't even see 2 of the splitters on the map, so they're pretty much just not there. Pretty bad. But he did get a whiff on one of them. It was like a weird backdoor one that I kind of thought was a slider almost. It was strange. I don't know how. It was like foul tip from Altuve. Yes, we call foul tips whiffs. Fight me.
Sure.
It is the same exact impact on everything. But he almost hit it. Well, he almost hit it all the time when they swing for the most part. Okay. You got to draw the line somewhere. To me, it's if it goes back into the glove, you still didn't do what you want to do with it. Stop. 16 out of 48 called strikes also on that sinker for Jordan Hicks is pretty cool. But right, as you mentioned, I'm seeing a 4 inches less drop, 5 inches less horizontal movement, but plus 2 inches of velocity. And the gap between the sinker at 17 inches of horizontal break and the -7 of the sweeper. Yeah, I think that's enough. 24 inches difference is absolutely enough here. And it means that he has 77% strike rate. I love it.
Yeah. Just a couple quick thoughts on the other guys in this tier, and you can, tell me your thoughts too. Kevin Gossman, the splitter was bad last year, and the splitter was not getting whiffs and it
2
wasn't
for 34.
It's not just like, hey, he needs other pitches. David Peterson, pretty solid start against the Marlins. The sinker location could have been a lot better. But as James Shiano pointed out on Twitter, there's a lot of work that Peterson did in the offseason about getting his slider to the back foot of right-handed hitters, and he did a really good job against the Marlins of that yesterday. Again, it's the Marlins, and take it with a grain of salt. I still think
whip, man.
I still think Peterson is probably more of a streamer, or I know Paul Sporer uses the term team streamer, of like where you keep him on your roster. You don't want to drop him, but like you're not going to start him against the
that's what you do generally against 15
whatever.
teamers. 12 teamers is a little tougher. I think in general, like a quality start league, I would be holding on to David Peterson. 5x5, you really just kind of see how the wire looks each week and don't hold too tightly to David Peterson. I will mention really good changeups down. Sinker was fine for the most part. There were some mistakes in the middle of the plate. Really good against lefties. For the most part, it was inside, down and away to right-handers. And really just seeing that the changeup and slider are both very effective is fun for me. Also, did you realize he has 7 feet of extension?
I didn't know that until I saw you write about it. And then I was like, oh, that's actually pretty good.
That's really good.
It's really good. Jose Soriano, I was intrigued by. First start against the White Sox, he went very sinker curveball heavy. But again, it was a start where he didn't really need to do a lot.
Well, I mean, that's what he did mostly last year. The slider has not developed much at all.
Well, but the slider is missing bats at least. And one thing that stood out to me that I like is I said what could help Jose Soriano break out is far better command, because he actually misses bats with some of his secondaries. Last year, the curveball, the slider, the splitter against lefties, they missed bats, but he couldn't get into counts where they could miss bats. First start, 64% zone rate on the sinker in the first start. He was a 44% zone rate guy on the sinker last year.
You want to know why? You want to know why?
He cut some of the run off of it too.
Yeah, there's that, and he stopped going inside with it. He's going all down and away against right-handers, and I don't know if I like that. I mean, you're right. It's a lot less run to it. I mean, this is dramatic. It's like 4 inches less horizontal run at just 11, which is not what we normally talk about for elite sinker, but its drop is really good.
Right.
It's so low. He added extra drop to it. So that makes sense. Down and away with drop is better than down and in with drop, because you can get some whiffs under the bat there, but the barrel can drop and that bam, it's gone. So I guess I'm okay with that, with being like an actual sinker baller. I would say for long-term success though, Soriano should take a hint from Keuchel and from Valdez, like do the neck beard approach. Like you want that sinker with so much drop to not be in the zone. You want to be right under the zone if you can.
Yeah.
And there will be days, I guarantee you, that Soriano's going to throw too many of those in the zone, and it's just going to be like, well, okay, we're going to go underneath it and launch this guy.
Yeah,
But
it's entirely possible. I just think it was an interesting first start, and then obviously
you're right.
You have Brady Singer here at 79. You had not seen the first outing. Curious your thoughts on the first outing. For me, the big thing with Brady Singer was he's not a drastically different pitcher in terms of like the Mackenzie Gore, like bringing in a massively new pitch. He added the cutter this offseason. And I think the thing for me that was also big in this first start is the cutter, the sinker, the four-seam fastball. He upped the usage of the four-seam fastball, and so he's throwing those 3 fastball variations all a lot. And so it's about sequencing and deception.
Dude,
and so that's the thing that like, so I don't know how to feel. I'm like, I wrote in, I'm prepping a note on all of this stuff, and I said, the sinker has a bit more movement. His four-seam fastball usage was up. He only threw 5 cutters. He's still mainly using 3 pitches. This feels like it's mainly just about sequencing. So I guess it's solid. I don't know. And that's kind of where I'm at.
So like, I'm gonna stop you for a second because I got 16 cutters at 89 and then 23 sliders at 83. The cutter was utilized against left-handers, which I dig, and was generally up and in. The four-seamer, he's throwing at only, he's at 75% strike rate. I wish it was actually lower because, and maybe not actually. What I'd like is that he is a 7 feet extension guy. He's like 6.9, but he is not like your 6.4 that we see from some sinker ballers and stuff. And it's not like a good four-seamer by, vert, by velocity, 92, 15 to 16 vert. It's a 1.1 height adjusted VAA, right? But because he's such a sinker-focused guy, this surprises batters. 3 for 12 whiffs on the four-seamer. He had an ex-WOBA on this four-seamer of 200, and none of his pitches had an ex-WOBA over 275. And I think very strongly, watching him actually go in and out with the sinkers and really commanding well, and actually, by the way, only a 57% strike rate on the slider and only 6 whiffs, which is actually very low for him. It was fun. It was different than the old Singer of just sinker slider and that's it.
Sure.
This was actually utilizing this stuff more than I saw, because there were games where he threw a ton of four-seamers and he just abandoned it, and it was just so bad for him last year. This felt like a proper mix with 17% cutters out of nowhere.
The Pitcher List website has 5% cutters. 5 total cutters, and then also in Kyle Bland's
I got to talk to some people about inconsistent data.
In Kyle's app, I see 5 cutters.
What? Brady Singer.
Brady Singer.
The 31st.
Yes.
Texas Rangers at Cincinnati Reds. Generate table.
Yes.
Brady Singer. 16 cutters.
Well, then that has changed from this morning when I took a screenshot from my article where it says 5 cutters. And the website right now only says
that's
5
hilarious.
cutters.
Okay. We will get to the bottom of that line.
And we'll get to the bottom of that before I publish that article tomorrow. We'll make sure that we have all of that data. Because
Kyle, we're upset with you. All right.
But obviously, like, listen, I hear everything you're saying and I agree. I think that makes a bigger difference, because then you're talking about not just mixing and matching 3 pitches. You're talking about mixing and matching 4 pitches that attack different parts of the strike zone at slightly different speeds, but not drastically different speeds, which adds to deception and makes it a little bit different. So we do kind of need to get to the bottom of like how many he actually threw.
I mean, here's the thing. I was watching it and I had this impression, regardless of the table, right? It was four-seamers were utilized really well as surprise pitches, and then commanding effectively with a sinker. Slider was a little frustrating at times, but the cutter being an approach up and into lefties is really cool. We have one more tier or two to talk about, and we're running out of time. So before we talk about them, we're going to take a quick break.
All right, so we have two more tiers. They don't all need that kind of analysis because we know some of them are streamers. But we start with tier number 11, number 80, AJ Smith-Shawver, number 81, Sean Burke, number 82, Kumar Rocker, number 83, Hayden Wesneski, number 84, Tyler Maui, number 85, Bowden Francis, and number 80 Smith, number 86, Sean Smith. Shane Smith, geez, oh my God, 86, Shane Smith, who actually pitches today, makes his season debut. What's this tier called, and why is it called that?
This is Canal Street, because you're going to see all these places trying to sell you things, and you don't think you should buy them.
Yes, listen. I bought my first cologne on Canal Street back when I was, I think, like maybe 11 years old.
It can work, but you don't know if you should buy them.
CK Uno got it on Canal Street. Obviously, this was before Kumar Rocker.
Did not pitch particularly well. Might not be on the list next week, guys.
And we need to just say, I know I got pushback from some people. I mentioned this on Twitter. The Rangers have said that they are planning for Patrick Corbin to be in the rotation for the Seattle series starting on April 11th. And I know you're going to say, why the hell would they want Patrick Corbin in the rotation? He hasn't pitched well for years.
No, I'd say, why the heck?
Yes, you would say that. Why the HE double hockey sticks would, but this is, who cares if you agree with it or not? This is, the organization signed him. They said they want him in the rotation by that date.
And
so
let's be honest,
assume that's what they're going to do.
Rocker isn't performing at that level. Right. And that's just the state of the matter of it. To go quickly here, AJ Smith-Shawver is interesting. He had a lot of under the hood data that was kind of cool, especially with the four-seamer, and I want to see it in another start, but the command isn't there. And that's the big thing. And maybe it's the moment getting to him a bit. He hasn't really had an opportunity to get runway in the rotation for Atlanta. He gets the Miami Marlins. You might want to do a spec out there, see how that goes, and at least be in control of your destiny instead of waiting for that start. But I'm not as optimistic on AJ Smith-Shawver at the moment because I really think there's too much chaos inside of this, and it just doesn't quite add up yet. Sean Burke versus Shane Smith. We're going to see Shane Smith tonight, so I'm excited about that. I am worried about Sean Burke, though. He's at 94, not 96. And the slider and the curve were not nearly as good and dependable as we saw in September last year. So I know it was a good outing of shutout ball, but I'm not quite buying that Sean Burke is all of a sudden going to be this good guy for the White Sox as much as I want him to. Tyler Mahle isn't impressing me that much. I know that it was a very bad start and it was a lot of things just didn't go his way. It was a guy nibbling with a four-seamer. He just couldn't quite execute it. But the secondaries aren't really helping much, and it's at 93. And when I really think about what the ceiling is for Tyler Mahle, it's not that high. So I realized that I had to recalibrate this one a lot. I'm at 84. I expect a better start moving forward, but I'm not trying to get it. Bowden Francis, I got to hand it to him. He made it work again. I don't know how. I don't buy it. I really don't. If someone can sit down and tell me by actual analysis of what he's doing in the individual pitches and say, this is it and this is believable, I would love to hear it. And sometimes I just got to say, shut up, Nick, and just accept it. And that's fine. I'll raise him up next week into the next tier as long as he does it again later this week. But I'm just going to stick to my guns of I don't trust it. It doesn't make sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to me, I'm just not going to do it. And that's how I feel.
I agree with you on that. I have some concerns about people in the next tier as well. Tier 12, number 87, Michael Wacha, 88, Mitch Keller, 89, Brandon Pfaadt, 90, Luis Severino, 91, Jose Barrios, 92, Tanner Houck, 93, Nestor Cortez, 94, Chris Paddock. What's this tier called? Why is it called that?
Going to the dentist. Because you got to do it maybe, but you don't really want to go.
Yeah. And Tanner Houck, as a Red Sox fan, looked terrible. I'm legit concerned.
Yeah.
Nestor Cortez, the velocity was down. He got hit around. Should be concerned there. Chris Paddock should not have long in the rotation. He did not look good.
He looked so bad. And at first I was like, okay, he's not cooked. He just allowed a bad slider, had a bad some luck originally, and then just got worse and worse. I'm like, oh no. I do want to say Brandon Pfaadt went 3 for 9 curveball whiffs against lefties. And that's not saying that that's going to be a consistent thing, but at least it's something new against lefties. And I'm like, okay, I'm aware. Please continue that. And maybe we can have a conversation. But otherwise, everyone else, Michael Wacha, I'm not worried about. Mitch Keller, you took on the Marlins. Who cares? Jose Barrios is the great undulator, and I just don't want to deal with it. And Luis Severino, fine. It was okay in Seattle, but it's not enough for me.
Yeah. And that we just saw the first game in Sacramento last night, and there were a ton of runs. So we'll see how that plays in the future. The final tier 13, number 95, Simeon Woods Richardson, number 96, Walker Buehler, 97, Tyler Anderson, 98, Eduardo Rodriguez, 99, JP Sears, 100, Osvaldo Bido. What's this tier called? Why is it called that?
It's really just take your pick, is what it is. Is manatees with beach balls. Okay. It's whoever you want really to put at the end here, by all means. I understand that Simeon Woods Richardson's also getting the White Sox, so fine. Walker Buehler looked so bad. And this is exactly why we have him ranked high-ish in the beginning. Is like, cool, we don't know, but at least you'll know quickly to drop or not. Nope.
I'm not
move on completely, guys. Do not stay with Walker Buehler.
I'm not dropping. I'm just gonna say that I am a biased Red Sox fan, so please take that into account.
Don't, Eric. There's got to be someone else higher in this list that you should be going for.
Sure, I mean league dependent, but there are some. I'm willing to take another start. I like.
All right, fair enough. I could be very wrong, but
I just like that he leaned into the
dropped
sweeper.
Him in a league instantly.
I like that he leaned into the sweeper a little bit more. Went away from the four-seamer, sinkers, cutters, sweepers. I'm okay to hold for a little bit more.
So
I got to ask you in the last minute here.
Yeah.
Just very quick thoughts on where, in general, you would have ranked Thomas Harrington had you known prior to this that he was going to get called up.
Yeah, probably where like Sean Burke is, 81, 82. I think he's 91, 92 is not an impressive fastball. He's command focused and control focused more than like filthy stuff focused. Mm-hmm. I do not go for that. I don't think you need to pick him up. I don't think for 12 teamers that there is enough of a ceiling to chase. Then you have the innate problem of MLB debuts. You don't want to start guys, and the shag rug of rookie pitchers are more prone to massive blowups than your veterans who know how to make adjustments in game. So I'm not a fan of getting Thomas Harrington, guys.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to put a damper on the end of the podcast.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah,
you're wrong.
And you know what? You should watch the start. Check it out, everybody. We'll see how it goes today against the Rays.
On we're going to be back TV/pitcher list. We'll be streaming it, of course.
We are going to be back for probably a little more movement on the list next week, a little more discussion of some of the guys in the top, a little bit of a longer episode next week than we had this week. So make sure you tune in and check that out with us. I am Eric Samulski, the Pelican.
I'm Nick Pollack, the Lion.
And I'm going to go prepare an essay for Nick on why he should hold on to Walker Buehler.